Story 1. Make good food. Seriously, if you don't like a lot of vegetables, I think it's due to poor cooking. For example, I hated broccoli for most of my life. Tasted rubbery and unappetizing. That's because I only had broccoli boiled with no seasoning. Once I tried it in a stir fry with a bit of ginger and garlic, I loved broccoli. I just dislike boiled, flavorless broccoli. I found this to be true for many vegetables. It's all about how they're cooked. Story 2. Pulse or chop the vegetables very small, or blend them for a little bit to achieve a fine consistency. Then you can incorporate them into meals like soup, taco meat, or wherever you prefer. Kids and some adults can tolerate them much better when they are less noticeable. I also do this with vegetables I am not particularly fond of. Story 3. Making your own salsa is a great way to include a variety of vegetables, as long as you are comfortable with the texture. Story 4. Blend them into sauces or chop them as finely as possible without becoming frustrated. Then add them to your dish. When they are very small, they are difficult to avoid, but the rest of the dish usually overpowers the flavor. Story 5. You can start by learning how to properly prepare vegetables. I lived in the United States for a while, and what people there do to vegetables is an atrocity that has nothing to do with cooking. Story 6. I'm a chef and I want to share an easy trick that many people overlook. Take the vegetables you like, such as bell pepper, tomatoes, zucchini, cucumber, mushrooms, and leek. Blend them, add some herbs and spices, then heat the mixture in a pot to create a sauce. This paired with pasta is amazing and quick to prepare. Story 7. Finely chopped spinach blends easily into various foods. You can even buy it frozen, but the quality may vary. Sometimes it can be stringy. I recommend removing the stems, as they can be unappetizing. The leaves themselves are great when chopped and added to dishes. You can incorporate spinach into ramen, any type of pasta, pizza, rice, soup, and more. If you enjoy flavorful dishes, herbs also provide greens. I love cilantro and basil, and I grow both indoors. Herbs are easy to cultivate. In the summer, I grow them outdoors and get an abundant harvest. Whenever I prepare Mexican-style rice, meat, or tacos, I add a generous amount of cilantro. For basil, I add a fair amount to my pasta. In the summer, when my basil has grown into a sizable bush, I use it as the base for a salad. Story 8. Roasted vegetables have been a game changer for me. They bring out the sweetness, and there are no more mushy, limp vegetables. I usually include onion, zucchini, yellow squash, red bell pepper, and baby carrots. I also add whole unpeeled garlic cloves. Cut the vegetables into similar sizes. Big chunks are okay. Add olive oil, salt, pepper, and some dried seasonings. Make sure not to overcrowd the sheet pan. Cook at least 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 15 minutes on each side, until the vegetables have a little char on them, but not too much. Take the garlic cloves and squeeze out the roasted garlic paste onto the vegetables. Season with a little lemon juice and fresh parsley if desired. Delicious. Story 9. V8 vegetable juice has a taste I prefer over real vegetables. It is easier, more convenient, and less expensive than buying a variety of vegetables that may end up rotting eventually. Story 10. Proper Chinese stir-fried vegetables, Szechuan spicy green beans, and garlic-fried Chinese broccoli add so much flavor. Story 11. Smoothies are how I started. You can mix protein powder, oats, and milk, and add a fair bit of vegetables without tasting or noticing them. Then I gradually increased the amount until I could taste it. This showed me it wasn't so much about taste, but rather about texture. I researched cooking techniques that helped me avoid unwanted textures and learned how to season food properly. Working in hospitality allowed me to be around chefs from whom I could ask questions. Now I love vegetables. My favorite treat in the world is kale chips. To make them, take the kale, cover it in oil and salt, pepper, and chili flakes, then bake in the oven until slightly brown at the edges. I dislike how chewy kale is, but I love the flavor when it is cooked. Baking it makes it flake in your mouth, resembling a healthy, crispy treat. I could eat mountains of it. The best advice I can give is to experiment and be okay with not liking everything. Always give new things a try, even if you've tried them before. Story 12. Changing how the vegetable is cooked, using it in another dish, or cutting it into smaller pieces can make a difference. I dislike vegetables, but I later realized that it is not the vegetables themselves I dislike. It's the way they are prepared, whether washed, cooked, or not cooked. For example, I can't eat cucumbers, but when they are pickled, I enjoy them. Story 13. What can help is to put them in a sauce like a curry, or blend them into a pasta sauce. Don't just boil or steam them, make it tasty. Story 14. If you don't like vegetables, then you are probably preparing them incorrectly. I grew up not liking many vegetables because of the way they were cooked, plain, boiled, or simply poorly. Then I married someone who truly knows how to cook. There are a few vegetables I still don't care for, but 95% of the ones she prepares regularly, I enjoy as if they were fine chocolate. Story 15. Everyone likes at least one vegetable. You might not know every vegetable. Try each one and then make a list. Just add those to your diet. Story 16. I don't dislike them, but incorporating them into sauces or mashing them in potatoes is helpful. Spinach in cheesy pasta, cauliflower cheese, and cauliflower mashed potatoes can enhance the dish. Sweet potato is one of your 5 servings of vegetables. You can add that to mashed potatoes. Story 17. I know this may sound unusual, but I went vegan for 6 months. I adopted a vegan diet after watching a health documentary and discovered the significant benefits of vegetables. Since this experience, my body and mind have reset to crave them. I now genuinely desire vegetables that I never craved before and have been incorporating them into every meal willingly rather than out of obligation. Story 18. As someone who previously disliked vegetables, I discovered it was due to unappealing cooking methods. Now, I am addicted to tiger skin green beans in garlic. Additionally, sautéed broccoli cooked to the right consistency is amazing. Brussels sprouts with a touch of Parmesan and bacon bits are irresistible. Story 19. Roasting vegetables makes them taste significantly better and downright delicious at best. Bonus points for olive oil, garlic powder, salt, pepper, and Parmesan. Story 20. Add any spices you prefer. A bit of Cajun seasoning enhances the flavor of any dish and can help mask the taste of vegetables you may not enjoy. Roasting vegetables also brings out more pleasant flavors, in my opinion. Story 21. I used to overcook them by frying instead of steaming or boiling. Now, I enjoy indulgent salads when I have time, made with lettuce, avocado, and tomatoes, topped with sautéed onions and mushrooms, perhaps some refried leftover meat cut into small pieces, and plenty of dressing. Story 22. As a child who didn't like vegetables, my mom would gradually incorporate them into soup, little by little. Eventually, we would ask her what had changed. Knowing that they were vegetables would surprise us, and then she would mix them with meat. Over time, we found that we wanted to eat them on their own. I believe it is a slow process, but you will get there. Story 23. Make it colorful. My mom used to prepare dishes that included at least 3 types of vegetables in 2 different colors. Creating a visually appealing vegetable dish helps me. Story 24. I blend a large amount of green vegetable mix from Costco with water before I eat meat. Story 25. All these answers can be summarized as butter, seasoning, and dressings. Personally, I would just start eating vegetables directly and then integrate them into cooking. Story 26. Air fry, boil, or bake until done. Get some salsa for dipping, or use unsweetened ketchup as a base for a sauce and mix in seasonings. Some people enjoy adding a bit of mayonnaise, mustard, or garlic. Just use seasoning. Story 27. I realized it was not the vegetables I did not like, but rather the cooking method that made the texture unappealing for me. I grill vegetables or eat them raw with dinner, and changing that approach has really helped me get what I need. I also make a fruit smoothie every morning to ensure I get my fruits and often add some kale for an extra health boost. I also make pasta sauce with vegetables and blend it until smooth. It's a very good way to incorporate vegetables without tasting them too much. Story 28. You can also focus on fruits. In terms of fiber and dietary restrictions, they are fairly similar, and fruits are generally easier to eat for most people. Story 29. Most vegetables are much better when they are roasted. Cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, green beans, and beets are all regularly included in my meals. Story 30. Force them raw with olive oil and balsamic vinegar because they are essential and good for health. They serve as health fuel. Include carbohydrates and meat or fish for pleasure. Story 31. I will add a vegetable to my pasta, such as spinach or broccoli, or a casserole so it mixes in with other ingredients. I also enjoy the harvest snaps. The tomato variety is made with red lentils, and the new loaded taco flavor is made with navy beans. Story 32. I add vegetables to the soup. Mushrooms, onion, tomato, celery, pepper, and potato. The vegetables absorb flavor from the soup, making it more filling. Story 33. There were two significant factors that made me enjoy eating vegetables. 1. I turned 14 years old. I learned how to cook. The first factor is self-explanatory. The second factor is important as well because many people who claim to dislike vegetables simply do not know how to prepare them. There are countless videos online demonstrating how to cook. You can learn the basics in just a few days. Story 34. I learned to select fresh, flavorful vegetables and roast them with a bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper, as well as prepare a delicious curry. Story 35. You can also eat them. I know that sounds odd, but cook them, put them on your plate, and enjoy them before the part you want to eat. Story 36. Puree the vegetables and incorporate them into other dishes. I add carrots to spaghetti, squash to shepherd's pie, and puree other vegetables as well. Pureed kale can be added to a tomato base or Alfredo sauce. That's what I do for my kids. Story 37. I find that mixing food I don't particularly enjoy with food I like, such as adding peas to mashed potatoes, works for me. I am on the autism spectrum, and food texture is very important to me. I also take one bite of a vegetable followed by one bite of something I enjoy. Story 38. By force. I am over 60 years old and was recently diagnosed with diabetes and high cholesterol. I need to modify my diet or risk spending less time enjoying life. It's not so bad, though. It just means I have to reduce my intake of protein and sugars, while increasing my consumption of greens and vegetables, as well as foods rich in fiber. Story 39. My husband included some canned vegetables, stews, and soups. It's a texture issue for him, and unfortunately, he had a babysitter who was abusive regarding his resistance to vegetables as a child, which did not help. On top of the texture issues, he still associates that texture with vomiting. I prefer fresh or frozen vegetables, but I'll eat canned peas if that's what it takes for him to have any. I would like him to have more canned green beans since that's something he genuinely likes, but I dislike them. I don't mind if we throw out half a can because he gets tired of leftovers, but he does. Our doctor would like him to incorporate more fresh or frozen vegetables but agrees that canned is much better than nothing. She has been happy to see some improvements for him. Story 40. As a child, I had issues with food. I didn't like vegetables and was generally a picky eater. Eventually, I learned to accept vegetables when they were combined with other foods I enjoyed, such as a burger with lettuce and tomato or a plate of chicken and rice with some salad. The key was masking the texture and flavor of the vegetables with items I liked, such as meats or carbohydrates. Now, I can eat a plain salad without any problem, but 10 years ago, my parents would have thought they were hallucinating if they saw me eating greens. Story 41. My uncle is in his 80s and claims to have not eaten anything green in 30 years. The only vegetable I have seen him eat is potatoes. I will ask him if he ever starts. Story 42. Find some that you like. Add seasoning or hot sauce. Understand that they may not be as exciting as a sub sandwich, but they help your body maintain health. Story 43. I put carrots, celery, onions, and garlic into every dish with ground meat, such as tacos, pasta, and hamburgers. It helps that my husband has amazing knife skills. Story 44. I grew up disliking vegetables and seldom ate them because, in my country, most tended to be stir-fried with soy sauce, which made them boring and have an iron-like taste. However, once I started working as a food writer, I had to try everything. It helped that restaurants often showcased their best vegetables and salads for publicity, and I discovered a side of vegetables I never knew I liked. With great dressings, the iron taste disappeared. When freshly tossed, they are crunchy and delicious. Now, I enjoy salads very much. Story 45. Soup and pasta sauce can be enhanced by cooking a variety of vegetables and mixing them with spices. Tarts are also a great option. Story 46. I've never been a big fan of salad, but I think I've figured out how to make them tolerable. Step 1. Have a balanced mix of liked and not so liked base flavors. I still won't eat a bunch of lettuce and tomato by themselves, but on a sandwich with meat and cheese, they add freshness. Step 2. Find a good seasoning or dressing. The first time I ate a proper salad, I doused it with dressing thinking I would hate it anyway, but it actually tasted pretty good. Unfortunately, I can't remember which one it was. It might not be quite as healthy, but personally, I'm not a fan of the raw plant taste. Step 3. Break everything down into small mixable bits. This way, it's easier to get more flavors in one mouthful, and I don't feel like I'm eating leaves and chunks of disliked vegetables. My sister made me a salad last weekend with olives. I've always disliked olives for their smell, yet I actually finished it before my steak. Cheese chunks and balsamic dressing for the win. Story 47. I have major texture issues with many vegetables. I found that smaller pieces are easier for me to handle and do not make me gag as much as larger pieces do. My fiancé makes a green sauce that I love. It is made from blended vegetables that I would struggle to eat on their own. Story 48. You get married, have children, and are required to eat whatever is prepared for the family. You either eat it or you don't eat at all. It's that simple. Story 49. My friend has an aversion to vegetables, so I usually make them eat some. Blending can help if you are making a sauce or dressing for meat or pasta. I personally enjoy sautéing or steaming to soften them, so the texture blends or is overpowered by other foods, allowing you to get the flavor without the texture if that is the issue. I enjoy steaming mushroom stems and mixing them with rice and sautéed vegetables. Story 50. Reduce sugar and salt intake in your overall diet. It is a helpful strategy that worked for me. If you normally consume a lot of these ingredients, cutting back can adjust your palate. Vegetables, when prepared well, are good on their own, but you may not appreciate them as much if you are used to heavy doses of salt and sugar. You can enjoy the additional benefits of living a healthier life with a better diet overall. This approach may not be suitable for everyone, as it involves making multiple dietary changes at once, but it helped me, so I thought I would share. Story 51. Making a good sauce does the trick for me. I have never been a huge fan of cauliflower, but pairing it with a tasty sauce makes it delicious. Story 52. I roast the vegetables with a variety of seasonings and olive oil. Sometimes I add balsamic vinegar. I especially love roasted onions, broccoli, zucchini, and carrots. It pairs well with a side of protein and mashed potatoes. Story 53. Puree vegetables in a food processor and incorporate them smoothly. Make meatballs or meatloaf using half meat and half vegetable puree. This makes them lighter and fluffier, and nobody knows they are eating vegetables. Story 54. Make a blended soup with your favorites. I boil half the vegetables in chicken stock until they get soft, while the other half roasts in the oven along with some garlic. Then, combine the roasted ingredients in the pot and use a stick blender. This results in a quick and convenient side cup of soup packed with vegetables. My husband enjoys it with his sandwiches. Story 55. Okay, not me, but my wife's boys when they were younger. I could not get them to eat any vegetables at all. However, they liked all my other meal items, so I devised a plan. At first, I did not tell my wife, as she would not have been able to keep the secret. I made a meatloaf and added 2 12-ounce bags of California blend vegetables to it. I thawed the vegetables and then put them through my food processor before adding them to the meatloaf mixture. They claimed it was the best meatloaf ever. I told my wife afterward, and she promised to never reveal the secret. So once a week or so, I would make it and they would get at least some vegetables. Story 56. I don't dislike vegetables, but when we were kids, My dad always chopped them up finely and added them to the sauces. Story 57. Season them like you do meat. Green beans with soy sauce, garlic, and roasted pine nuts. Broccoli with roasted garlic slices. Roasted squash with cheese. Forget about it. Story 58. Why do you feel the need to enjoy the food you eat? Eating is essential for survival. It is a chore, not a pleasure. Story 59. Start where you shop. Avoid all commercial and industrial-grade vegetables. Organic is usually the best option, but not always. The secret is finding farm-fresh vegetables. Who knew celery could be so amazing? Of all the vegetables, celery receives the most complaints. Commercial supermarket-grade celery is often lacking in quality. If you can find a farmer's market with fresh celery, you'll first notice that it's dark green. Fresh celery is sweet and has an almost cinnamon-like flavor. Store-bought celery is typically anemic green and tastes like pesticide. Just one example. Story 60. Wraps, sandwiches, soups, stews, and roasted vegetables with olive oil and salt and pepper are great options. I love vegetables, but I have found that this variety appeals to those who typically do not enjoy them. Story 61. You can add peppers to various dishes if you sauté them. Make sure to choose red or orange bell peppers, as green ones are unripe and bitter. Consider using them in lasagna, chili, egg casserole, enchiladas, jambalaya, or spaghetti with meatballs. Fun fact: red bell peppers contain 3 times the vitamin C of an orange. Story 62. Change how you cook vegetables. I found that buying a wok and stir-frying made many vegetables transition from mediocre to delicious. Another method is to roast them in the oven in a single layer on parchment paper with oil, salt, and pepper. Not overcrowding the pan is essential for achieving a properly crisp texture on the edges. Story 63. It's one part learning to cook vegetables and one part finding ways to sneak them in. I discovered that I love roasted carrots and cauliflower. I got a mini food processor to help mince onions and peppers so I could make meatloaf with vegetables mixed in. I found a frozen cauliflower crust pizza that tastes great. I decided that as an adult, I would try different vegetables at least once to see how they taste. Story 64. Honestly, I get other people to prepare the food. I buy the few vegetables I can stomach and then forget I have them in the fridge. The amount of vegetables I've thrown out because of that is staggering. I started buying onions, chopping them very small, and freezing them for convenience. The same goes for peppers, though I chop them a little larger. I still forget they are there. Making a tomato sauce for pasta is no problem. Remembering to add the peppers I bought? Not so much. I should make more soups since I always blend them, but it never happens. My appetite is practically non-existent, and it's difficult to motivate myself to cook when nothing appeals. Story 65. My favorite way to eat cucumbers is to peel them, but I always felt like I should learn to eat them with the peel. Once I accepted that this is how I enjoy them, I started eating cucumbers almost every day. Not sure if that's helpful. Story 66. I was not a huge fan of them until I started cooking them myself. I never knew how much flavor they have and how you can season them to make the taste more intense. Story 67. I grew up eating boiled vegetables with a pinch of salt. However, when my wife and I started cooking at our own home, we roasted vegetables with real seasoning, which completely changed their texture and taste. Story 68. I dislike fresh salad, especially celery. Now, I focus on mixing delicious vegetables with my favorite light dressing. For protein, I choose either chicken or steak. Sometimes I add spinach to my fruit smoothie. Story 69. I have 2 friends who will not eat vegetables. They both say it's a texture issue. Blending them into a soup or making a vegetable-based sauce is the only effective method they have found to trick themselves. Story 70. I like vegetables, but because I cook for one, I'm disinclined to fuss with making a lot of different dishes. Roasting them usually works and doesn't result in a large pile of dishes. Alternatively, I order the vegetable option from my favorite Chinese takeout. Story 71. I do not like vegetables since I am very sensitive to bitter things. It does not matter how you cook them. They are still bitter. I have learned to prepare vegetables in a way that works for me, which varies. Broccoli is the worst for me, but I still eat it. I prefer it with soy sauce. I enjoy air-fried Brussels sprouts, sautéed asparagus, and slightly undercooked green beans. I also include many beans in everything I can. The main benefit that vegetables provide is good fiber and bulk. If you are not eating enough vegetables, make sure to either add a fiber supplement like psyllium husk or chia seeds, or consume enough fruit to help. While there are many other nutritional benefits to vegetables, increasing your fiber intake can compensate significantly. Story 72. I don't dislike them, but they do require a lot of energy to eat. Crunchy foods tend to do that. I take vitamins, as many as I can afford that are viable. Sometimes smoothies are also a good option if I can afford them. Before, I could go to a store further away that had a delicious, affordable frozen ratatouille, which really helped, but it's too far now. Story 73. I make homemade pesto sauce using spring mix, and I always go heavy-handed with the vegetables. I usually use 50% more vegetables than the recipe calls for. Sometimes, like last night, I just eat them because I have to. Story 74. Cook it better. Growing up, it was always steamed or some other Depression-era recipe handed down. Just add some salt, olive oil, and a touch of Parmesan cheese to broccoli or asparagus, and it's delicious. Sadly, I still struggle with lettuce because I feel like I'm eating leaves, but it makes me feel better, so I force myself. One day, I hope I won't have to. Story 75. We got an induction burner for about $120 and started having regular hot pot nights. It turns out that vegetables cooked in delicious broth or dunked in dipping sauce are tasty. If you're near a good Asian grocery store, you can find frozen broths, but we have also made our own bone broths, which makes it easy to tailor the spices to the flavors you like. Story 76. Most of the time, I kept eating beans until I got used to them. I still don't like most beans, but I will eat them a bit if forced. When I was growing up, we had to try whatever was served, even if we already knew we didn't like it. The only exception to that rule was when something made us physically ill. Eggs cooked in any way except scrambled made me nauseous, and squash made me feel sick even when cut into small pieces and hidden in a casserole. I didn't like green beans as a child, so I put ranch dressing on them. Eventually, I reached a point where I ate them without ranch, gradually using less and less. Now, I love them. However, I still can't stand baked beans. Story 77. Many of us grew up disliking vegetables because our mothers overcooked them. As an adult, I enjoy vegetables. Story 78. Change the serving method. For years, my mom made a boiled asparagus dish with mayonnaise that she learned from a Taiwanese cook while my parents lived in the United States. I absolutely hated asparagus growing up as a result. It wasn't until my early 20s that I discovered oven-baked asparagus with a bit of black pepper and garlic, which is absolutely delicious. Story 79. Blend vegetables into foods I already enjoy, such as a greens-heavy pesto. I often buy a regular pesto, make an all-spinach or kale pesto, and then mix a spoonful of each into my pasta. I blend roasted bell peppers with tomato sauce and add onions and garlic to almost every savory meal, as they count as vegetables. I also include frozen peas and corn in rice dishes. Butternut squash pasta is another favorite. I roast various vegetables with oil and use plenty of garlic powder. Ultimately, I remind myself that I am an adult and need to eat at least one vegetable every day. I didn't eat many vegetables until I was 28. Now, when I go grocery shopping, the first items on my list are always vegetables. I buy broccoli, a bag of dark leafy greens, something in season like winter squash or zucchini, carrots, and celery. I use potatoes as a carbohydrate base instead of rice or pasta a few times a week, and aim to have a salad for a meal at least 3 times a week. Many adults today do not consume vegetables regularly because they expect food to be very salty, fatty, and meaty, which vegetables do not fulfill. For me, it's about adjusting my expectations of food and changing my palate. Story 80. I prefer raw vegetables, so I buy myself a small vegetable tray every weekend. This includes ranch dip. Story 81. The vegetables I love, I am allergic to, so the ones I dislike. Bagged mixed vegetables thrown in seasoned rice with a protein are the only ones I am somewhat okay with. Peas and green beans are fine. I love them. I don't like celery at all. It makes me feel physically ill, and I can't add it to anything, not even in a small amount. For carrots, I can only use them in the rice mentioned earlier. Corn is fine. It's always good, but I don't like eating much of it unless it's on the cob. Lettuce is okay, but I don't buy it because it spoils quickly. Even if I ate half a head today, it would go bad almost the next day. Raw or stewed carrots also make me feel ill, sometimes even the ones in the rice, but not as badly as celery. Story 82. Growing up, I always disliked vegetables. I would literally gag if my parents forced me to eat anything except corn and potatoes. Eventually, I discovered that I don't dislike vegetables. I dislike cooked vegetables. The taste and texture are completely different to me, and I don't like them at all, no matter how they are prepared or what seasonings or sauces are added. However, I enjoy nearly every vegetable when it is raw. Therefore, I eat a lot of salads, and I always keep carrots, celery, snap peas, and other vegetables around for snacking. I also take vitamin supplements. Story 83. I drink my vegetables. I make a green smoothie with a lot of vegetables. I dislike it, but it helps me consume a significant amount of vegetables in a short time. Story 84. I was on a smoothie kick for a while. Whatever berries or fruit sounded tasty, I added some plain yogurt and a handful of spinach. Blackberries, in particular, made it sweeter than any milkshake I've ever had, and the only sign of spinach was the green tint. I couldn't even taste it. Story 85. I eat about 4 to 5 cups of kale with dinner every night. I simply cook it in the pan with salt and butter, and sometimes add Cajun seasoning. It's actually quite tasty that way. Story 86. I know someone who doesn't like vegetables, so he doesn't eat them, except for starchy vegetables like potatoes. The only foods I have seen him eat are grilled cheese sandwiches made with white bread, as he doesn't like whole wheat, and bacon and eggs with home fries. He is in his 70s and is perfectly healthy. He coaches a beginner 5K running group. Before he started running in his 60s, he never really exercised much either. Story 87. My gastroenterologist informed me that I needed more fiber in my diet. Making veggie bars from dehydrated kale and spinach leaves has helped the most. My mother-in-law gave us a tabletop dehydrator that I use to dry the leaves until they crumble to dust. Putting them in the oven on the lowest setting works as well. Then, I blend them in a food processor with dried apricots, flaxseed powder, a handful of walnuts, and a tablespoon of honey to bind everything together when I press it into a pan or muffin tins. It's not fine dining by any means, but it doesn't require refrigeration, and I ensure I get some vegetables every day instead of buying health food that spoils in my fridge. Story 88. My husband grates carrot, swede, and parsnip into our cottage pie. It is very tasty. Additionally, soup can conceal a variety of ingredients or any liquidized sauce. Story 89. I don't particularly like cooked vegetables. This is what I eat for fruits and vegetables each day, along with each meal. Breakfast, banana. Lunch, apple. Dinner, a very big salad with romaine, red cabbage, carrots, tomatoes, and feta. Sometimes I add red peppers as well. Story 90. Throughout my childhood, all the way into my early 20s, I disliked vegetables. It was more than just a preference. If I tried to eat them, I would gag and couldn't even swallow them. People would say things like, "Oh, you'll like it the way I cook it." But I wouldn't. I was anxious about eating at other people's homes and self-conscious about ordering chicken fingers and fries at every restaurant. I had serious mental blocks regarding vegetables that I struggled to overcome. However, I did, and now I eat plenty of them. Here's what worked for me. First, I started taking a multivitamin. You can get good chewable or gummy ones. It's not a replacement for vegetables, but at least it's something. I also liked most fruits, so I incorporated a lot of them into my diet. Next, I began branching out, starting small. I focused on what I liked and extended from there. I enjoyed potatoes. I know they don't really count as a vegetable, but still. From there, I tried sweet potato fries. They weren't as good as regular fries, but they were close enough in texture that I didn't feel put off. The taste was mediocre, but I kept trying them and got more accustomed to it. Gradually, I moved on to sweet potatoes prepared like regular potatoes, mashed, roasted, etc. Did I enjoy it? Not at all. But that wasn't the goal. It was about being able to eat them without gagging and breaking down the mental barriers. Another thing I tried was vegetable snacks. I know they're probably the farthest thing you could get from actual vegetables while still having veggie in the name, but that's not the point. The point is familiarity. I genuinely enjoyed eating them, which helped break down my subconscious mental blocks regarding vegetables. It helped my mind start associating vegetables with being tasty. I also liked pizza sauce and pasta sauce as long as they didn't have chunks. Building on that, I moved on to tomato soup. That was pretty easy to get used to, and it led me to try other soups, some of which used vegetable stock. Again, that was not a difficult change, and it helped me get accustomed to the taste of vegetables and even enjoy it. I progressed to cooking things like cauliflower, squash, carrots, garlic, and other root vegetables down into a mushy consistency, then blended them with stock to make vegetable soups. This was quite delicious and easy to enjoy. The next step was having larger chunks of vegetables in my soups. This wasn't easy as textures were significant for me, but I took it slow. I already liked the taste, so I gradually worked on incorporating slightly bigger chunks of vegetables into my soups. They were still cooked until they were mushy, so I didn't experience the strong aversion I would have felt if I were crunching through a raw vegetable. I slowly increased the size of the chunks and the variety of vegetables. From there, I focused on incorporating some of the soup vegetables I liked, but outside of soup. Again, I cooked them until they were mushy. To someone who loves vegetables, preparing them this way might sound terrible, but it worked for me. I continued experimenting, trying different sauces and dips. Our overcooked Brussels sprouts, fried in butter and bacon and loaded with cheese, healthy? Absolutely not. But they were delicious and helped me get used to eating Brussels sprouts. If I tried a new vegetable or one I already liked, cooked properly instead of boiled to mush, and didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't force myself to keep eating until I gagged. Instead, I would simply try it and move on. The next time, I would give it another shot, perhaps having a little more. Building up familiarity helped break down my aversion. Eventually, I grew accustomed to them and began enjoying them when cooked properly. And here I am today. I eat lots of vegetables, even whole salads. Are there some vegetables I still don't like? Sure. I'm still not fond of most raw vegetables, but at least I can eat them without gagging. I can now go to someone's house for dinner without anxiety. I had a strong aversion to vegetables. I overcame it by starting with vegetable-flavored items, slowly incorporating vegetables into soups, then overcooked vegetables covered in sauce, and finally to properly cooked vegetables. Story 91. I eat them first when I'm the most hungry. To the people saying you just haven't had them cooked right, my wife is a professional chef with many notable accomplishments in her field. I've had vegetables prepared every possible way. You cannot hide the flavor of a vegetable. It tastes like freshly cut grass, and there is no texture of vegetable that I find tolerable. I know I must eat them, so I do. But at 43 years old, I don't think I will ever get used to a plant-based diet. I'm a carnivore. That's why I have these pointy teeth. Story 92. Soup. A couple of weeks ago, I made frozen chicken and potatoes with onion, spinach, zucchini, carrots, and cabbage. My daughter picked out the vegetables. I estimate that I included about 12 servings of vegetables in that pot. Story 93. I eat them first by themselves, plain. I know I will dislike them no matter what, so let's not waste time trying to hide that fact. Generally, you get better nutrients from them if you do not overcook them while trying to disguise them in a dish. Then, as a reward, I get to enjoy my other food that tastes amazing. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.